I took the train to the reunion today since we planned to drink. There, I ran into a guy who used to tease me a lot, whom we'll call Brandon. Man, you don't even have a car. Is that just a pipe dream for someone as poor as you? Well, even if you had one, a broke guy like you could only afford a clunker, so you couldn't show up here in one anyway. Brandon said this, bursting into loud laughter. I was really irritated by his attitude at that point. Judging someone without knowing anything about them is just not funny at all. After that, he kept following me, bragging about himself. Honestly, I was getting fed up with him. Then, a luxury limousine pulled into the venue's parking lot. It stopped in front of the entrance, and a beautiful woman got out. As soon as our eyes met, she greeted me respectfully. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the middle child of 5 siblings. I have an older sister and brother. And I have a younger sister and brother. Mom always had a gentle smile. She never raised her voice, always responding or advising us, no matter our whims. Dad is a taxi driver. He used to work for a car maintenance company, but he had to retire due to a back injury. Dad, who loved cars and worked in that field, also had a commercial driving license. So he switched to his current job as a driver, taking advantage of that qualification. I was heavily influenced by my dad and developed a strong interest in cars. I always played with die-cast cars I got at children's events or tour cars my dad received from clients. I also learned about various types of cars by looking for car encyclopedias handed down from my brother. I would recall the knowledge and shapes I memorized and doodle them on flyers and school notebooks. My teacher, Mr. Thompson, used to scold me, saying, "Your notebook looks like a catalog. Stop doodling. It's a fond memory." My greatest joy was looking for car catalogs that Dad brought home. Thanks to his old job, he still had connections with many car dealers and would occasionally bring home catalogs of the cars they handled. Seeing the changing cover designs with each season and the new car models designed for each season always thrilled me. But my dad seemed a bit concerned about this. "Hey, Kevin, I feel bad that I can only give you catalogs. If you want comics or other toys, just let me know. I'll find a way to get them for you." "Really? I'm fine. I enjoy these a lot." "Is that so?" Our family wasn't wealthy by any standard. After all, we were a family of 7. Just the food and education expenses for a month were substantial. Clothes and school supplies were hand-me-downs from my older siblings. Even if I wanted a new toy, I could only get it on my birthday. There was a time when I really wanted a car game and begged my parents for it, but they looked troubled and said, "Sorry, we'd love to get it for you, but things are tight right now," with regret in their voices. Being at the age when my selfishness was at its peak, I became sullen for about 3 days when my request was denied. But as I grew older, I started to understand our family's situation. With that understanding, I began to grasp just a bit of the feelings my parents had when they had to refuse our whims. At that time, I acknowledged my parents' boundless kindness and gradually stopped being so demanding. The school I attended was a small one. With only 2 classes per grade, standout individuals were recognized by all students. Just like us, the Smith siblings. As a result, we were often teased. But my older siblings, being well-grounded individuals, managed to turn such negative comments into jokes or simply brushed them off skillfully. My younger brother was the biggest and strongest among us, so he countered such ridicule with his physical presence and assertiveness. Perhaps because of that, he was respected by those around us. He became what you might call the leader of the pack. And my youngest sister, being raised as the baby of the family, was the best at making requests. All 4 of us spoiled her endlessly. Because of this, she became a beloved figure among her peers, adored by everyone in her grade. Before I knew it, she had mastered the art of charm and had won over many allies. That's why no one dared to criticize us for being a family of 7 siblings. As for me, I ended up becoming the main target of teasing. I lacked strength and didn't have the courage to confront or change my surroundings. That's why the verbal arrows meant for my siblings ended up being directed at me. But in such times, my older siblings always protected me. It was a great joy for me back then. Yet, with every instance, I felt a pathetic sense of powerlessness for not being able to do anything on my own. There was a guy in my class named Brandon. He was born into a wealthy family and could get almost anything he wanted. His life was the complete opposite of mine. Brandon, knowing my love for cars, would always boast about the cars his parents owned. "You probably don't have this at your place, or you must be jealous, right?" He would say things like that, each remark hurting me. In addition, he brought high-quality toys like die-cast cars, model kits, and RC cars to school. Toys that were of a much higher quality than the cheap ones I owned, and he would boast about them to me and our classmates. He let others handle them freely, but he would never let me. Whenever I asked, he'd always say, "I don't want your poverty to rub off on me." However, it's against the rules to bring such items to school. He would show them off to everyone, avoiding the teacher's gaze. Then one day, he went too far. "Check this out," he boasted, holding up a limited edition model that even enthusiasts would envy, in front of everyone. A piece worth a considerable amount if sold on the market. He had brought such an item to school. Naturally, everyone was impressed, expressing their envy. They all handled the model, admiring it. But of course, he didn't let me touch it. After school, an incident occurred. The limited edition model was missing. Vanished without a trace. Brandon started causing a commotion in the classroom over it. "You did it, didn't you?" He was quick to suspect me, the first one he accused. Naturally, I denied it, but he wouldn't listen to a word I said. He just bombarded me with insults. Then, our teacher, Mr. Thompson, walked into the classroom. Mr. Thompson asked the calmest student, "What happened here?" After understanding the situation, Mr. Thompson came over to Brandon and me to hear both sides of the story. I was insisting on my innocence. Brandon, on the other hand, was unilaterally placing the blame on me. Mr. Thompson seemed to sense something and let out a deep sigh. Then he said, "I understand the situation, so let's all start looking for it. Something that valuable can't just disappear." And everyone remaining in the classroom began searching. For a while, nothing was found, but as the day was about to end, one of the boys came forward, looking guilty, in front of Mr. Thompson. He admitted, "I'm sorry, I hid it," and immediately went to apologize to Brandon as well. Brandon forgave him easily, as if it were a minor matter. Despite having been so harsh with me, I was filled with surprise and anger, but at that moment, I couldn't say anything. Mr. Thompson was still a young teacher, with a flexible mindset and a broad perspective, always treating us students fairly. He kindly said to me, "You got caught up in quite a mess." Those words were a strong stimulus for me, who had been continually blamed without the usual support of my older siblings. Tears streamed down my face as I told Mr. Thompson in broken words, "I was suspected because I'm poor. It can't be helped. But it becomes harder and harder when everyone looks at me like that. Not being believed was painful." Mr. Thompson gently patted my head and said softly, "It's better to speak up against unfairness. That courage will be the key to saving your heart. Besides, you're not alone. There are always people who believe in you, just like I believe in you, Kevin." Those words stayed with me deeply. Knowing there were people who believed in me, I felt reassured that I had someone to rely on, and from the next day, I was more open about expressing my thoughts. As days passed, I became more outgoing. Being honest and speaking my mind led to less teasing about being one of 7 siblings. However, Brandon's attitude remained unchanged. I continued to assert my dislikes without backing down. When he became too persistent, I made it a point to ignore him. Eventually, Brandon would walk away, clearly not amused. I learned that hiding my feelings wouldn't convey them to others. By actively speaking up, I could change from who I used to be. Feeling hopeful, I started engaging more with my classmates. Gradually, as I made various friends, Brandon's harassment stopped. 20 years have passed, and I've grown. Speaking up has become a part of who I am, enabling me to connect with many. Now, I'm engaged in a job that benefits from my network. Around that time, I got a call from my parents. There was a letter for me in the mailbox. I had my parents check it, and it was an invitation to a reunion. The main event was to celebrate the 20-year milestone and unearth the time capsule we buried in 5th grade. Initially, I thought nah, but when I heard that Mr. Thompson, who had always been kind to me, would also attend, I decided to participate immediately. However, my current workload made attending challenging. But I began to strategize, thinking I could make it work by rearranging some commitments. I now live far from my hometown, away from my family home. I thought getting to the venue would be difficult, but it was conveniently near my current residence. I can make it if I finish my work in the morning, I thought. With that last concern resolved, my plans were set. Choosing a venue for the after-party, which I had also pondered, was Zia. I promptly booked a spot online. The reunion took place in a spacious pub, reserved entirely for us. Since the invitation mentioned drinking, I opted for the train over driving. The highlight was the unveiling of the time capsule. The organizer had retrieved it from our elementary school and brought it to the reunion. We were to open it together on Signal. Upon arrival, old friends welcomed me warmly. Despite nearly 2 decades, I recognized everyone. Everyone had matured well, displaying a charm almost beyond recognition from our elementary days. I enjoyed catching up and reminiscing with them. At that moment, a notably lively group entered. In the midst of them was Brandon, eagerly talking about the luxury car he now owned. Brandon's car is stunning. I've never seen such a luxury vehicle before. Me too, me too. Typical Brandon, always so extravagant. His friends, essentially a fan club, were relentless in their adulation. Brandon himself was roaring with laughter, visibly basking in the attention. His entrance and style dominated the room, capturing everyone's gaze. Today, Brandon was decked out like a celebrity, his suit paired with ostentatious gold accessories and a watch that glittered with diamonds, unabashedly flaunting his wealth. His followers erupted in cheers, their enthusiasm unmistakable. "Really? Well, I'll take you all for a spin later," he announced, with the flamboyance of a showman. His followers erupted in cheers again, their excitement undiminished. Intrigued by the luxury car that had sparked such a buzz, I looked outside the venue. There, prominently displayed at the entrance, was a vivid red luxury sports car. Its presence was like a tomato on top of a sundae. Well, it was out of place, to say the least. Observing the car in disbelief, Brandon came over to me. And true to form, he immediately taunted me with poor. Granted, I hadn't dressed lavishly for the event. My watch was modest, and my suit was a standard charcoal gray. My shoes were the usual leather, making me resemble the typical office worker seen downtown. Hence, his jab seemed unwarranted, leaving me bemused. "You're a car enthusiast, right? How did you arrive today, huh?" "As usual, I took the train," I answered. At this, Brandon howled with laughter. "You don't own a car. is having one just an unattainable dream for someone as poor as you. Even if you did. A guy like you could only afford a beater, so showing up in one wouldn't be an option, right? Brandon jeered, his laughter booming. His arrogance was infuriating. Making assumptions without knowledge is one thing, but finding them amusing is entirely another. Engaging him would only escalate the situation. So, as before, I responded ambiguously and removed myself from the conversation. However, throughout the reunion, he followed me about, constantly boasting. Eventually, even I grew weary of his relentless self-promotion. Initially annoyed, my encounter with my former teacher provided a welcome distraction, and Brandon eventually drifted away. I savored the time catching up with Mr. Thompson, discussing the past and present. This exchange lifted my mood, making me anticipate the after-party. But then, the cacophony returned. One of Brandon's entourage seemed to be begging for a ride in his car. Assuming Brandon was reveling in the limelight, I glanced his way. Regrettably, our eyes met. "Oh, are you jealous too? You should just admit it if you are. But I wouldn't let someone like you touch it anyway. Don't want my precious car catching your poverty stink." While embracing his two sidekicks standing beside him with both arms, he said. Then he added, "But hey, if you grovel and lick my shoes, maybe I'll consider it. Miss this chance, and you'll never get a ride." To be honest, comments like that made me feel more contempt than anger. I pitied him and chuckled dismissively. Just then, "Hey, check that out. What is that? I've never seen such a car in real life." People near the entrance were whispering excitedly. Curious, I went to see what the fuss was about. There stood a limousine, even more out of place than Brandon's car. "Hey Brandon, man, you're incredible. Did you arrange this car too?" One of his followers looked at him with admiration. But Brandon himself seemed confused. "No, I don't know anything about this." Brandon muttered that under his breath. Then, the people around him suddenly looked puzzled and started looking around, wondering who it could be. Just then, a beautiful woman stepped out of the limousine. Upon spotting me, she smiled and nodded in greeting. "Mr. Smith, sorry to keep you waiting. I've arranged the car for the after-party as you instructed." "Ah, thanks," I replied. Our exchange made my classmates do a double take. Then a friend from the organizing committee came over and thanked me. "Kevin, thanks for arranging this. This was passable because of my current job. I'm the president of a luxury car rental company." My friends, who've kept in touch, knew this. This time, I was asked if I could plan an impactful after-party, so I decided to offer a limousine at a discounted rate. We planned to head to the after-party venue in the limousine after the main event. To ensure enjoyment during the ride, I stocked the limousine's fridge with various drinks and snacks. That should be impactful enough. The friend organizing the event explained the situation to everyone there. From different parts of the crowd, voices could be heard saying that Kevin is a president and must be some kind of joke. Can't be real. Like the organizer, a few friends were in the know about me, but it seemed most were not. Amid all the attention, Brandon approached me. You're the president of a rental car company. That's not true, right?" "It's no lie. With my line of work, I've seen so many luxury cars, I'm practically jaded. I think they're fine for an occasional spin, but for everyday use, a regular car suits me just fine." With a relaxed smile, I grinned at Brandon. At that, he seemed to flush with frustration, his face turning beet red. Not only the car, but everyone was also captivated by the woman who had stepped out of the limousine. Noticing the many gazes on her, she addressed the classmates, saying, "I am serving as Kevin's secretary." The crowd, initially stunned, quickly gathered around her. "You're so beautiful. You must be great at your job. How long have you been Kevin's secretary? Frankly, what do you think of him? Which university did you graduate from?" Faced with a barrage of questions, the secretary seemed a bit bewildered. So, I decided to set the record straight. Sorry to spoil the fun, but she's my sister, so back off, I said. What? Seriously? Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Yes, the woman serving as my secretary is indeed my sister. Known for her charm and for attracting the opposite sex throughout her school years, she's become somewhat of a legend. While she's still as willful as ever on the inside, her outward appearance is undeniably appealing. Thanks to that, when she handles client relations, she's guaranteed to be a great success. She's truly a valuable asset. By the way, Mr. Smith, about that sports car parked in front of the shop, my sister inquired. Yes, that's right, but it's not really worth mentioning, I whispered back. However, Brandon must have overheard because he shouted, "What's that? Say it clearly." So, with a sigh, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That car, it's a rental, right? It's one of the cars our company rents out, isn't it?" Brandon turned beet red and denied, "That's not true. I bought that car." However, the car had a sticker on the window, clearly indicating it was a rental. Anyone familiar would instantly recognize this. It seemed no one else at the venue was aware, so I had kept quiet about it. Upon realizing Brandon's car was a rental, his followers quickly changed their tune. In disbelief, they said, "So it was just borrowed. What a letdown, seriously," and walked away from him. Then, they began to prepare to leave the venue. They even began preparing to leave, getting into the after-party mood. Only my secretary, Brandon, and I were left in the now messy pub. I didn't know what to say to the disheartened Brandon. At that moment, he started to mutter various things. He was born an only child into a wealthy family, in stark contrast to me. However, his parents often sacrificed their time because of their wealth and were rarely home. He was given everything he wanted, but he always felt a sense of loneliness. In contrast, I had many siblings. My older brothers and sisters looked out for me, and I had adorable younger siblings. Brandon seemed to envy that. He too liked cars and often browsed thrift catalogs. He wanted to be friends over our shared interest in cars, but never said so because of his pride. He also wanted to apologize for the model incident from the past, but after that event, I stopped interacting with him, which made him anxious. The same went for today's luxury car. He knew it was out of place but wanted to grab the crowd's attention by driving it. I was listening seriously, but my sister wasn't. Upon hearing his confession, she immediately exclaimed, "That's creepy." I tried to calm her down, saying, "That's no way to talk about something someone said seriously," but my sister wouldn't stop. Teasing just because you want attention, maybe that's fine for kids, but for an adult to say that, it's nothing but creepy. It's like being a stalker. Brandon was visibly shocked by her relentless words. I thought to myself, she went too far, but even as the two of us felt down, my sister continued relentlessly. "If you wanted to make up, you should have just apologized sincerely instead of all this roundabout nonsense. Acting like this for years is just childish and uncool," she said. Brandon looked like he was about to cry. But what my sister said was right. Though, I do think she might have gone a bit too far. Sorry for my sister, but she's right. There's a limit to how much you can push your pride. I'm sorry, but I can't see us becoming friends, I told him. Hearing this, Brandon collapsed to his knees, even more devastated. I heard there's an after-party. Where's it at? Mr. Thompson, our former teacher, suddenly appeared amidst the tense atmosphere. You guys, arguing like this when you should be capable of mature thought. Honestly, it's a bit disappointing as your teacher, he said. Mr. Thompson, how long have you been listening? I couldn't help but give a wry smile. Mr. Thompson said, laughing heartily, well, I didn't intend to at first. Then, He suddenly became quiet and looked at Brandon with a serious expression. Brandon, a dialogue is about respecting the other person's opinion while expressing your own. You're aware of what you've done up to this point, right? Regardless of your past, you can't erase those facts. So, the right to forgive or not lies with Kevin. Just because you apologize doesn't mean you'll be forgiven. It doesn't always work out so conveniently. Although Mr. Thompson's tone was as gentle as possible, his words were stern. He must have given the same guidance to him when he was in elementary school. Brandon began to cry suddenly, perhaps recalling that time. Next, Mr. Thompson looked at me. You've become able to express your feelings clearly. People can change, they can grow. I believe you understand that. You might feel unforgivable now, but I hope you can look at it in the long run. To me, both of you are dear former students, he said with a gentle smile. Mr. Thompson's words seemed to slowly seep into my heart. Thanks to his warm influence, I felt like I had more room in my heart. Thanks to that, I was able to think like this. Right now, I might not be able to forgive Brandon. The wounds he inflicted are deep. But if he tries to change and make efforts from now on, perhaps we could become good friends again. In the chilly, heavy, and damp atmosphere of the bar, even in such a situation, Mr. Thompson remained unflappable. Well, that's a fantastic limousine. Does it even have a refrigerator? Riding in such a car must be like a dream. By the way, how many people can it hold? It can hold up to 8 people. Well, that's amazing. While receiving various explanations from my sister, Mr. Thompson carefully observed the limousine. As I watched Mr. Thompson with amusement, Brandon spoke to me. I'm truly sorry for what I did in the past and just now. I'll never trouble you again. I won't be so presumptuous as to ask for forgiveness. But if we ever meet again, I hope you'll give us a chance to rebuild our relationship. Well, if we meet again. It's hard to suddenly engage in a friendly conversation with him. But watching someone trying to change makes you want to keep an eye on them. I couldn't help but let out a bittersweet smile, mixed with complex feelings. Just before we left the bar, a time capsule opening ceremony was held. At the organizer's cue, everyone counted down, and at the end, the seal was broken. Then, everyone took out the items with their names on them. Inside the time capsule with my name was a toy car I used to play with and a letter. Upon opening it, the letter was written in the awkward handwriting of a young boy. It began with, "To my adult self. To my adult self, are you doing well? Did you get a job related to cars? I'm currently trying to make friends with various people. I've gradually made more friends. Spending time with friends is fun. I've become able to express my feelings thanks to the words given by Mr. Thompson. Have you forgotten about this? Please make sure to say thank you. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely do not forget." I couldn't help but laugh after reading the last part. Mr. Thompson, who saw me, slowly walked over to me. Was there something funny written? Yes, well, please look at this. I showed Mr. Thompson the letter. Then, Mr. Thompson, with a delighted smile, said, "How nostalgic, you were shy, but you had your childlike moments like this." To Mr. Thompson, I said, "Mr. Thompson, thank you for everything back then. I am who I am today because of you." Hearing this, the others also began to express their gratitude. You helped us create an opportunity to reconcile with friends. I came to love math, which I used to struggle with, and now I'm working my dream job as a surveyor. Thanks to Mr. Thompson's encouragement, I was able to pursue my dreams. My success today is all thanks to you. Thank you. Each of them expressed their gratitude to Mr. Thompson in turn. Though we were all well into adulthood, at that moment, we seemed just like we were back in elementary school. The way we eagerly and happily expressed our feelings was just like when we were kids. I'm the one who should be thankful. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Thompson, looking pleased, repeated his words many times. Tears seemed to well up in his eyes. Seeing you all grown up into fine adults makes me truly happy. I'm so glad to be able to spend time together like this. Truly, this is a teacher's greatest reward." Mr. Thompson's words moved many of his former students to tears. Amidst this emotional atmosphere, applause broke out from somewhere, filling the bar. The reunion, 20 years in the making, ended with a booming applause. A lot of time has passed since the reunion ended. If there's one thing that has changed in my daily life since that day, it's that there's an additional photo in my room. In it, Brandon and I are both smiling. We're standing in front of cars we each bought with our own money, arms around each other's shoulders. Becoming friends with him, despite our past grievances, was also thanks to Mr. Thompson. Every morning when I see this photo, I'm reminded that people can change. And at the same time, I resolve to live my life without forgetting Mr. Thompson's words that come back to me repeatedly. The moment I stepped into my new workplace, I felt like I was in a completely different world. My name is Tom Yates, and I'm 32. I recently switched jobs to a game development company as a programmer. Originally, I was working elsewhere, but due to certain circumstances, I ended up transferring here. I didn't really have a choice in the matter, but on my first day, I honestly regretted coming. One reason was that there were quite a few people who seemed to have it out for me, a mid-career hire. Currently, I'm troubled by the presence of my colleague, Linda. She is 2 years younger than me, at 30. If she stays silent, she's remarkably attractive, with the facial features and body figure of a model. I was surprised to find out she's also a programmer like me. I had assumed she worked in a more public-facing role, like public relations. Essentially, she's my direct senior. Linda seems to have an unusual animosity towards male colleagues. She might have had some difficult experiences in the past, but that has nothing to do with me. Yet, Linda's anger and irritation are currently directed straight at me. It's an utterly unreasonable situation. Thinking I shouldn't have come is understandable under these circumstances. Don't just stand there daydreaming. You're not expecting someone to bring you coffee as soon as you sit at your desk in the morning, are you? This morning, as soon as I arrived at my desk, Linda snapped at me. The worst part is that Linda's seat is right next to mine. I don't think that at all. I replied lightly, and Linda snorted in dissatisfaction. Instead of starting her own work, she kept watching my every move. This happens every morning. Looking for mistakes, nitpicking. Even if it's not a mistake, or if it's not done her way, she exaggerates and gossips to everyone. Because of Linda, I seem to have been labeled as the incompetent team member in this workplace. I'm stuck doing menial tasks and running errands every day. The person who brought me to this company was my middle school friend, Nathan Carter. We went to different colleges, so I don't know how Nathan spent his university days. He founded this game company during his college years and has been here ever since. The first time we got back in touch after a long while was 6 months ago. He asked for my help to improve the quality of the programming team. I joined this company, intending to lend a hand for Nathan's sake. I told Nathan not to give me any special treatment when I joined, because I wanted to interact with my colleagues without any preconceptions. However, Linda has significantly derailed that plan. I'm racking my brain about what to do next. Everyone was saying President Carter poached you from another company, so we were all expecting some kind of genius to show up. But what we got was just an errand runner. Huh? Linda deliberately spoke to me in a loud voice, making sure others could hear. It was obvious to anyone that she was speaking loudly so that the other colleagues could hear her. Responding in anger would be childish. I've decided to ignore Linda's remarks, but her persistence in picking on me is truly relentless. Are you ignoring me? I'm talking to you, Tom. I might be younger, but in this company, I'm your senior. A little respect wouldn't hurt, she said, annoyingly. This must be what they call an annoying nag. I just smiled slightly at Linda and continued to ignore her. As if nothing had happened, I turned on my computer and started my day's work. You better take your work seriously. You'll never catch up to us otherwise, Linda said, sensing my lack of response, and then she left her seat. Finally, I can work in peace. I sighed a small sigh of relief. Hey, you look down, Nathan said. After enduring Linda's sarcasm all day, I was completely drained by the evening. Even though I was out for dinner with Nathan for the first time in a while, I seemed to be lost in thought. Did I look that way? Just a bit tired, I replied. Maybe you're just not used to the air in America anymore, Nathan said with a meaningful smile. From his expression, I could tell he was still holding on to the fact that I had quietly applied to and attended a university abroad. What's with that tone? You still holding a grudge? I asked. Nathan is usually a straightforward and good guy, but he becomes a different person when this topic comes up. It seems Nathan had his own plans. He wanted us to attend the same university and start a company together. That was Nathan's plan and dream. He should have told me something so important sooner. Expecting someone to read between the lines is not how things work here. I went to a university abroad because I wanted to experience something new. I always felt that I fit in better abroad than in America. I'm not very attuned to the subtle emotions of others, so that's what I thought vaguely. But there's another reason I've never told anyone. Because you went abroad for university, my startup was delayed by 2 years, Nathan said, his eyes slightly unfocused from the wine. Hey, aren't you drinking too much? You've never been good with alcohol, I cautioned him as he reached for the wine bottle to refill his empty glass. I only drink like this here. Maybe it's the owner's taste, but the wine and the food are so good that I always end up drinking too much, Nathan said. I couldn't help but agree with Nathan's words. This was the first place Nathan brought me to after I returned to America, and it's a very comfortable place. The creative French cuisine served here is unbelievably delicious. The wine selected to accompany the meal is almost gone from the second bottle. It makes me happy to be praised by Nathan, a young woman's voice said from behind me. Nathan raised his hand slightly towards the owner of the voice. Since I praised you, today's on owner Madison, Nathan joked. The woman laughed from the back of her throat at Nathan's light-hearted comment. A woody fragrance wafted past my nose. Nice to meet you. I'm Chris Madison, the woman said with a smile, peeking at my face. Hearing the name she introduced, I was taken aback. It was because I had seen the name on the contract. Owner Madison is a woman. I had totally assumed it was a man. Surprised too much, my true thoughts accidentally slipped out, and I quickly covered my mouth with both hands. Chris laughed heartily, perhaps finding me amusing. She then pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. It's because my name is Chris. I often get that reaction. Resting her elbows on the table and looking up at me with a mischievous gleam in her eye, she seemed to glare at me playfully. Despite saying she often hears it, she appeared somewhat displeased. But Chris is such a beautiful name for a woman, isn't it? Without any flattery, those words just slipped out. I was surprised at myself. Chris seemed just as surprised, her eyes widening even more. I'm happy even if it's just flattery. Thank you, she said with a smile, looking very attractive to me. Her expressions changed so naturally and sincerely, making her incredibly likable. The one who provided the funds for my startup on a whim was Chris here, so she's also the owner of my company, and she owns this place too, Nathan explained. From Nathan's tone, it seemed Chris was quite the entrepreneur. She must have a knack for business. Yet, She looked younger than us. When Nathan was in college, she might have still been in high school or even in middle school. How she managed to come by enough funds to start a business just like that was a mystery. The mystery only deepened. "Don't worry, it's not shady money," Chris said with a chuckle, as if she could read my thoughts. "The only thing I've figured out from our first meeting," I said. "You've figured out something already," Chris responded, sounding pleased. It made me think she was someone who enjoyed conversation. "I've realized you're a woman full of mysteries," I replied. Chris smiled enigmatically at my response. Chris laughed meaningfully at my response. Then, she reached out with her pale hand to the wine glass left on the table. The dim light shone through the red wine, casting a beautiful glow on Chris's pale hand. It swayed gently, looking incredibly elegant. I watched Chris slowly take a sip of wine, vaguely aware of my excitement about what she would say next. "Men are silly. Women are made of mysteries. A woman who can be fully understood is hardly worth mentioning," she replied. Her response struck a chord with me. After being nagged and criticized all day, I couldn't help but cherish this moment of enjoyable conversation even more. "Hey, am I intruding here?" Nathan interjected, sounding a bit disgruntled, as if he felt left out of the conversation between Chris and me. "Are we being a bother?" "Maybe we are," we both responded, causing Nathan to let out an exasperated hey, hey. Unbeknownst to the tipsy Nathan, Chris had discreetly passed me her private phone number as we were leaving. Even after such a wonderful encounter, the same dreary morning awaited the next day. Fortunately, I've always had a strong tolerance for alcohol and have never experienced a hangover. Nathan, who arrived at work a few minutes after me, looked terrible and was slumped over his desk in distress. "You drank too much," I told him, placing some hangover medicine and a bottle of mineral water on his desk. With a hoarse voice from the alcohol, Nathan slowly took the medicine, saying, "My bad," as he did so. "I'd hate to call it a favor, but I'm looking for some information," I said to Nathan, who had just chugged down 500 milliliters of water and was catching his breath. "I can give you any information about Chris. I've been sworn to secrecy," Nathan replied, prompting me to click my tongue in frustration. It seems Chris got ahead of me. Now, figuring out how to approach this situation becomes a troubling dilemma. Nathan is the only reliable source of information I have at the moment. "President Carter, hungover again," Linda interjected between Nathan and me. Although Nathan's title is president, his desk is on the same floor as ours. A consideration to make it easier for employees to consult with him. This makes the hierarchical barrier feel lower compared to other companies. Perhaps that's why Linda often talks to Nathan, the president, in a casual manner. "Should I go buy you some hangover medicine again? Do you need some energy drinks and water as well?" It must be a common occurrence for Nathan to be down with a hangover. Holding her cute pink wallet in both hands, Linda spoke to Nathan with an exasperated look. "I always feel bad for this, but from today, I'll be fine. I've got my wife here to look after me," Nathan said, pointing in my direction. Back when we used to hang out together, it was always Nathan who got into trouble, and it was my job to clean up after him. I was reminded of how I used to be called his wife. Sure enough, I had unconsciously bought hangover medicine, prepared mineral water, and even vegetable soup. Linda, who sharply noticed these items lined up on the desk, glared at me resentfully. That expression made me realize her cold attitude towards me might also have something to do with Nathan's presence. "So I'm unnecessary, then. Since I'm not useful for the work, I guess I'll just cover for you with errands," Linda said, folding her arms in front of her chest. Her posture made it clear that she was completely shutting me out. "Well, the underling should learn by watching my work and pick up the skills," Linda said condescendingly, and Nathan looked up at me as if he wanted to say something. I just shook my head slightly in response to his gaze. "I'm always learning from you," I replied with a smile, feeling that her sarcasm wasn't getting through. Linda clicked her tongue softly and walked away from Nathan's desk. As I watched her retreating figure, Nathan asked, "Is that okay with you?" "For now, it's fine. I have my own plans," I reassured him. Nathan must have felt something, seeing his close friend belittled in front of him. But revealing my true intentions isn't timely yet. I was called back by Nathan to grasp the situation within the company and the technical capabilities to root out any bad elements. I had intended to observe for a while, but circumstances didn't allow for that. The incident began with a phone call. I was the one who answered it. Before I could even mention the company's name, I was yelled at, nearly damaging my eardrum. The caller was that angry. It was from Director Smith, a longtime client to whom we had just delivered a program. Normally very calm, the call from Director Smith was unexpected. I managed to calm him down and listen as he explained that the program we delivered had a significant bug and that a part we had discussed changing during the specification meeting hadn't been altered at all in the delivered product. While listening, I operated the computer to check who was in charge of the project. It was a job handled by Linda's team. Glancing at Linda in shock, I could tell she must have heard the shouting through the receiver, as she was looking at me with a pale face. The client urgently requested a correction, with delivery by tomorrow. Unfortunately, Nathan was out on field work with the sales team. The atmosphere was too tense to even put the client on hold and check with Linda. "Understood. We'll start the corrections immediately," I said before hanging up. Linda rushed over to me after I put down the receiver. "Don't just accept it on your own. There's no way we can meet a deadline by tomorrow. If we fail, our reputation will plummet." Linda's face was pale as she continued to berate me. It seemed like she was maintaining her emotional balance by berating someone else. That's the impression I got. But this is work. There's no room for shifting blame or making excuses. "Weren't you the project leader? How do you plan to resolve this?" I asked, looking straight into Linda's eyes. She seemed a bit intimidated by my intensity and took a step back. But Linda isn't the type to back down. She quickly regained her composure and yelled back at me. "As a project leader, I've estimated it will take several days to fix. Are you holding a grudge against me by promising delivery by tomorrow?" Her forcefulness left me breathless. The client seemed to have no time to wait for several days. Bugs are one thing, but a mistake in the specification changes is inexcusable. It's evidence that the project team's coordination was poor. I counted, and Linda bit her lower lip, unable to respond. She must be aware of it herself. "We need to address this urgently. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know." "What can you do? All you've been good for is errands, like some decorative piece." Linda dismissed my offer, her face still pale as she gave a mocking smile. She seemed intent on belittling me at every turn. Just as I was about to protest, a voice cut in, stealing my line. "Well, it's a big mistake, but with Tom here, we'll be fine. I'm glad to have a genius programmer with us. I'm counting on you." It must have been a direct complaint from the client. Chris then appeared in the office. Owner Madison's arrival instantly heightened the tension in the room. Following Chris, Nathan hurried back from his field work. "Owner Madison, with all due respect, what makes this man a genius programmer? He hasn't been of any use since he joined until today." Linda spoke to Chris with a tone of mockery. "Why don't you see for yourself from now on?" At Chris's cue, Nathan started giving orders. He instructed that the program data be handed over to me immediately, and Linda resisted with a shocked expression. "President Carter, are you serious? Letting Tom handle the correction instead of me? He won't solve it even if he had a month," Linda protested vehemently. Nathan dismissed her with it's an executive order. With the president's command, Linda had no choice but to comply. Reluctantly, she sent me the data. The mistake in the specification change was a simple communication error, a clear human error. This is something we'll need to improve going forward. I reviewed a program data that arrived. It was likely constructed by Linda. A feminine, beautiful, and flexible program. But within it was an anomaly that seemed to have been intentionally inserted. This I could quickly locate and correct. We can meet the deadline by tomorrow. Please review the changed specifications. Without taking my eyes off the screen, I addressed Linda in that manner. My fingers continued to glide across the keyboard. Linda, who had inhaled sharply as if to defy my words, stopped in her tracks as she watched the code flow on my screen. Overwhelmed by the program I was writing, she kept repeating, "How can this be?" in a faint voice. "Why, that's a silly question. Didn't they say they hired a genius programmer?" Chris said to Linda, who was taken aback. Then, in a voice loud enough for the other employees to hear, Chris spoke about my background at a major IT company abroad and how I was recruited to improve the current internal situation. I've been hearing about the recent state of affairs inside the company from Nathan. Too many are sitting comfortably at the top, lacking humility and meticulousness in their work. I don't want to invest in a company with such employees. I want Tom to clean house. That's what I'm thinking," Chris said, causing more than one or two faces to change color. This deliberate bug was probably set up by someone to frame Linda. Although Linda has her issues personality-wise, her skill as a programmer is on par with Nathan's. My assessment was that she wouldn't normally make such a mistake. "I'll provide the funds. Please resolve this issue promptly," Chris said that, patted Linda on the shoulder, and left the office. She probably went to see the client. "Linda, please help me. It's difficult for me to meet the deadline alone," I said to Linda, who was still in a daze. Startled by my words, Linda snapped back to reality. Reluctantly, she sat down beside me and began to work. And she said thank you in a soft voice. It was a voice only I could hear, but I'm sure that's what she said. It turned out to be an all-night effort, but by the time the morning sun rose, we had corrected both the bug and the specification changes. I believe the speed was unparalleled by other companies. My eyes were sore, and my shoulders felt as stiff as steel. "You did well. We made it in time. I knew I could count on you," Nathan said, offering me an energy drink. He, too, had bags under his eyes. While we were making the corrections, Nathan had identified and decided on a punishment for the person who had planted the bug. The culprit was a mid-level male employee who was jealous of Linda's advancement. Originally Linda's mentor, he couldn't accept being surpassed in skill and position by his protege. Jealousy is an ugly thing, no matter how you look at it. "Did you talk to him about leaving?" I asked about the punishment. Nathan nodded quietly. "I see." It was evident from his expression that it was a difficult decision for the compassionate Nathan. "President Carter, would you like some coffee?" Linda offered coffee to the tired Nathan with gentleness. Nathan happily accepted it. Then, without a word, Linda also offered me a cup of coffee. I accepted it with a wry smile, and for once, her usually cheeky eyes softened with a smile. I wish I had a partner who could offer me coffee when I'm tired like this. I teased her, and Linda's ears turned red. "Don't expect that from Chris. She's useless for anything but making money," Nathan said about owner Madison, but it wasn't meant as an insult. It was clear from his affectionate tone. During the all-nighter, Chris called a few times. She was entertaining the client at that wine place, keeping them in good spirits. Thanks to her, we weren't rushed or disturbed by complaints during our work. It was truly a relief. "It's finished, you say. Congratulations," I've finished up on my end too and tossed everything into a taxi. Chris entered the office, seemingly a bit tipsy, her steps uncertain. She handed me a sandwich made by the chef of that restaurant, saying it was a treat. It seems there's soup inside the thermos, which retains heat well. It was a welcome provision for our tired bodies. Looks like you were drinking until just now, huh? All I can do is entertain and spend money to make sure no one complains. Chris laughed, claiming she had no other talents. But thanks to this talent, I was able to forcefully draw my destiny towards me, she said with a smile directed at me. Caught off guard by her sudden remark, all I could do was look puzzled. Linda, intrigued, jumped into the conversation. Are you talking about Tom as your destined partner? Huh? This was news to me as well. Look at Tom's face. He looks like a pigeon that's been shot with a beam. Chris laughed, holding her stomach as she looked at me. What does that mean? With a sly smile, Chris whispered, it's a secret until you remember, and placed her index finger over her lips. After the delivery in the afternoon, I was exhausted and fell asleep in the rest area, where I dreamt for the first time about the day I was leaving for abroad. A girl with a mature face crossed in front of me, being seen off by my parents. Her slender chin and porcelain-like pale skin caught my eye. Then, the girl looked at me and smiled faintly. Do I have enough value to be gazed at like this? Caught off guard by her question, I apologized for staring rudely. Then, I responded, I think you're definitely worth admiring. Thank you, that gives me confidence, she said, sitting down beside me with a thud. Then, she expressed a desire to know more about me. In the short time before boarding, I believe we talked about each other. I was heading to Oxford University, and she was going to the England to learn about her grandfather's business in the financial district, as I recall. I want to live surrounded by things I love, doing what I love, she laughed, stating her only wish. When the boarding announcement came, she stood up and stared at my face. Then she said, I appoint you as my destined person. I've decided now that you, who called me beautiful, are my goal. Be prepared. The face of the girl who laughed mischievously overlapped with Chris's as I woke up. Yes, good morning. I startled as Chris's voice came from right beside me. Did you remember anything about me? It was quite a task to find you. Really? Were you looking for me? My question came out awkwardly, overwhelmed by surprise. Oh yes, I spent a fortune hiring 6 detectives. All I had was information about Oxford University. Chris laughed, then confided in me about her next plan. The second phase of the plan is to make you fall in love with me. She said this with a serious face, even though that stage had long been surpassed. How should I convey this fact to her? What kind of expression would she have when I tell her? Excited, I carefully chose my words, hoping they would be the best possible answer for her. Hey, dropout. If you can answer this question in 30 minutes, I'll give you a $100,000 bonus, but if you can't, you are fired. These were the words of my boss, the department head Alex, during a mandatory training session that all employees at the headquarters had to attend. Naturally, a buzz spread throughout the large conference room that had become the venue for the training. Especially since many employees were already questioning the bizarre training that involved solving prestigious university entrance exam questions. Suddenly presenting me alone with a different difficult question, Alex had already made a bad impression. And by saying he'd give an impossible $100,000 bonus, it was clear to everyone that it was nothing but harassment. Other department heads rushed to stop him, but Alex seemed unfazed. He said it was no problem since I wouldn't be able to solve it anyway, but what the other department heads failed to see was that this wasn't the real issue. The company owns a conference room large enough to accommodate around 200 employees in the headquarters. It's a well-known major corporation in its own right. There's no way it wouldn't emphasize compliance. Alex seemed oblivious to this issue. Frustrated and venting my built-up stress, I sighed heavily and began to tackle the problem confidently. Little did I know how this incident would change both mine and Alex's careers. My name is Ryan. I turned 30 this year, but I've changed jobs more than 5 times, never sticking to one for long. Whether due to being deemed incompetent or not getting along with others, I've ended up resigning from every job. Now, I'm at my 6th company, and it's been half a year. It's one of the longer stints I've had, and I wish to stay peacefully for a longer duration, but I had a premonition that it wouldn't last long. The reason lies in the fact that I haven't been getting along with Alex from the international sales department where I work. Despite believing I'm better suited for less interactive roles, I often find myself in flashy departments like international business, which troubles me. Alex, proud of his prestigious university degree, harbored a prejudice that those without college degrees were lazy failures. However, this was only towards men, as he demeaned academically accomplished women by saying, "A woman's high education only makes her less attractive." I particularly disliked Alex. Having a mindset filled with prejudices is one reason, but there are many other reasons why I find it difficult to deal with. Even past 50 and unmarried, he boasted about his popularity with women and often made inappropriate comments to female colleagues. In an era where compliance is crucial, he carelessly made crude jokes, making female employees uncomfortable. He looked down on male employees without college degrees, taking credit for their work or blaming them for his mistakes. Taking credit for someone else's work, especially when looking down on them, shows a complete lack of pride. Alex, who despises me the most in the department, often makes snide remarks, saying, "How did a middle school dropout get assigned to such a prestigious department using underhanded methods? I don't understand why he mistakes me for a middle school dropout, but more than that, I detest being thought of as someone who used dirty tricks to get here. I would have preferred to work in a supportive role like accounting or administration rather than a high-profile department like international business. But we can always be placed in the department of our choice, so we have to do our best in the department we're assigned to, right?" To Alex's dissatisfaction, he assigned me menial tasks like copying and data entry. I didn't mind the work itself, as I preferred tasks that allowed me to work quietly on my own. However, his attempts to sabotage my work, like spilling coffee on documents or kicking my chair during data entry, were intolerable. Thankfully, my colleagues were aware and supportive. They even appreciated my ability to work accurately despite the interruptions. Emily, a colleague of the same age, seemed to trust me greatly, often coming to me for advice on work matters. Alex seemed displeased by that as well. Emily is the only highly educated female employee whom Alex doesn't belittle with his comments. The reason is that Alex favors her, but Emily pays him no mind. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say she dislikes him. While no one in the department is fond of Alex, Emily probably dislikes him the most. It's only natural to feel aversion towards a man 20 years your senior making unwanted advances. Emily is not just beautiful within our department, but is considered one of the most attractive women in the entire company. Rumors have it that she was scouted numerous times during her student years. Though I haven't heard it from her directly, and it remains a rumor, her beauty makes it easy to believe such claims. Emily's consulting with me, whom Alex looks down upon as a middle school dropout, fuels his jealousy, leading to even more harassment. In front of the female employees, he ridicules me for being a low-educated dropout and blames me for mistakes that aren't my fault, desperately trying to lower my evaluation. However, no one takes Alex's words seriously since he's disliked by everyone in the department, which only serves to lower his own reputation further. My colleagues say I should talk back, but I see no point in responding to Alex's nonsense that nobody believes. Thinking that talking back would only lead to more trouble, I chose to ignore it, which turned out to be a mistake. The harassment escalated, and eventually, Alex crossed the line. This incident occurred during a company-wide employee training that was said to involve all staff in the headquarters. This all-company training happens once a year, with each department head taking turns being in charge. The responsible department head decides on the training content, supposedly to enhance the employees' skills. This year, Alex, who was in charge, decided to use prestigious university entrance exam questions as a training content. Even if you've graduated from college, it's understandable that many are puzzled because not many can solve the entrance exam questions of prestigious university, which has the highest standard deviation score in America. Doing something like a test doesn't seem to enhance employee skills. When other department heads voiced their concerns, Alex replied, "No matter the age, studying is important. We mustn't forget the importance of effort. If the purpose is to cultivate the ability to make an effort, testing seems pointless. Tests are meant to assess results, especially entrance exams, which are designed to measure abilities." The training seems tailored for Alex to feel superior to those he deems less academically capable. Fortunately, the training's outcome doesn't affect evaluations, so failing to solve the problems isn't an issue. Some employees nostalgically engaged with the questions, but most quickly gave up, seeing no point in attempting them. Achieving a perfect score would bring no recognition, so it's understandable that many lost the motivation to try. If this were a college entrance or job examination, everyone would undoubtedly strive to solve the problems, even without clear understanding. However, for a training meant to improve skills, the lack of practical benefits makes the entire exercise feel like a waste of time. Alex, seeing employees giving up on the problems, taunted them, "Look, you are forgetting the importance of effort." Knowing they'd be mocked, the International Business Department employees pretended to work on the problems, yet Alex still taunted, "Can idiots who can't even solve this handle international business work?" It seems he just wants to look down on others and make snide remarks. Alex, who was patrolling around the desks like an exam proctor, stopped in front of me and handed me a piece of paper. The document contained a lengthy passage in French, leaving me puzzled about what was expected of me. So I looked up at Alex for guidance. Then, with a smug grin, he said, "If you can answer this in 30 minutes, I'll give you a $100,000 bonus, but if you can't, you are fired." A murmur spread through the large conference room, which had become the training venue. It was appalling that he would say such a thing during a company-wide training involving all headquarters employees. Other department heads rushed to stop him, but Alex seemed indifferent. Releasing the stress that had accumulated over time, I let out a heavy sigh and looked over the paper handed to me by Alex. Within 5 minutes, I responded to the question. The task was to translate a long French text, which contained words that were difficult to express in English or unknown to me. The unfamiliar words were likely intentionally incorrect neologisms. In preschools within French-speaking regions, a method commonly employed is phonics, which is used to recognize the rules of pronunciation and spelling in French. Familiar with French phonics, I was able to translate without being stumped by the unknown words. Alex, comparing my translation to the model answer, trembled in shock. "When will the bonus be deposited?" I asked with a pleasant smile, inquiring about the $100,000 bonus. Of course, I didn't seriously expect such a bonus to be paid. However, I couldn't forgive Alex for using the company training as an opportunity to harass me, just because I tend to be quiet. A little harassment directed at me was one thing, but I couldn't overlook Alex using valuable training time meant for skill improvement just to indulge in his sense of superiority. I'm not the type who's particularly driven by a sense of justice. Normally, I prefer to spend my time peacefully, but it seems I had reached my limit with all the harassment up to now. Without realizing it, I had accumulated a lot of stress. How can a dropout like you solve a problem that I couldn't? Alex revealed his own failure to solve the problem and yelled, unable to accept that I had solved it. Dropout. I graduated from Oxford University, you know. I had been insulted as a dropout many times before, but I am not a dropout. I had always wondered why such a misunderstanding had occurred. It seems Alex, having seen my resume, initially judged me based on my numerous job changes and labeled me as a troublemaker. However, the companies listed in my employment history are all well-known firms. Alex must have wondered what kind of educational background someone who doesn't stick with jobs yet works at famous companies each time would have. So, when he checked the education section, it only listed up to middle school. Indeed, the education section only goes up to middle school. Because the school I graduated from isn't in the United States, so in the United States, I'm considered a middle school graduate. Instead, in the self-promotion section, I noted that I had moved to the UK from high school and spent my time there through college. Alex must have misunderstood me as a dropout by only looking at the education section. When I explained this, Alex, unable to use education to assert dominance, complained, "Even so, you're someone who can't endure and quits companies quickly." Indeed, I have changed jobs 5 times in the 7 years since returning to my home country. There were reasons for that. The first time, I resigned because my discussions were deemed too complex and bothersome by others. I didn't think I was talking about anything particularly difficult, but if I couldn't be understood, there was no helping it. The second time, I faced harassment after being accused of getting cocky because of my good performance. If it was just harassment directed at me, I might have endured, but once it started affecting our clients, I had to resign. Being accused of showing off for working hard and being called incompetent for not doing enough led to my 5 job changes. That's why I wanted a job that didn't involve much interaction with people. The copying and data entry tasks that Alex had been harassing me with were actually the kind of work I thought suited me. I had even hoped to spend my entire workday doing nothing but copying and data entry. If Alex hadn't tried to set me up in front of everyone, I would have been content with quietly doing my copying and data entry tasks. What's all this noise? Did something happen? President Johnson, noticing the commotion in the conference room where the training was supposed to be happening, appeared with some executives. The roughly 200 employees went silent as President Johnson showed up. Seemingly puzzled by the sudden quiet after the previous noise, President Johnson asked Alex, the person in charge of the training, what had happened. However, Alex's explanation was a jumbled mess that made no sense. Then, President Johnson turned to Emily, who was nearby and likely knew the situation, for an explanation. Emily thoroughly explained everything from the content of the training to what Alex had tried to do to me, and how I easily solved the difficult problem, concluding, a person like Alex, who looks down on and harasses employees, is not fit to be a department head. Even though Emily was a favorite of his, Alex, unable to take the critique of not being fit for his position, retorted to President Johnson, "You wouldn't believe the words of a woman who's all looks right. Are you saying my daughter is just a pretty face?" President Johnson's expression turned to one of anger. Daughter. Everyone was shocked. The surprised expressions on the faces of all the International Business Department employees made it clear that no one had known. Alex's face turned pale. Emily, sighing, complained to President Johnson for revealing that she was his daughter. With the situation in chaos, the training couldn't possibly continue. President Johnson ordered Alex to stay at home and told Emily to order some delivery. The training, originally about prestigious university entrance exam questions, turned into a social gathering for improving communication, as commanded by President Johnson. At the start of the social gathering, I found myself bombarded with questions. Why had I kept my Oxford University graduation a secret? Why hadn't I utilized my French skills? Most questions were along these lines, but some people also asked for explanations about phonics in the curriculum at Oxford University. I tried to explain as simply and clearly as possible. As I did, even those who were just listening in seemed to become interested and started asking various questions, to which I responded diligently. Then, Emily suggested, "You might be suited for teaching, you know." Knowing now that she was the president's daughter, the employees quickly made space around us, giving Emily an easier environment to talk in. She mentioned she had wanted to work as a regular employee because she disliked this kind of attention. I never imagined it would be revealed like this, she said with a wry smile, then asked why I had switched jobs so often. I shared the reasons behind my frequent job changes. "You don't seem like the type to change jobs just because of that. I'm good at meticulous tasks, and, though it might be odd to say about oneself, I consider myself diligent. It seems strange to others that I would resign just because I didn't get along well with others." Indeed, it might not have been just because of poor interpersonal relationships that I resigned. I was suffering from depression, I said with a wry smile, and Emily apologized, thinking she had asked something inappropriate. The foreign high school I attended didn't rank students by grades, nor did it award achievements in sports or arts. The environment was thoroughly non-competitive, placing a strong emphasis on diversity. It was a culture of acknowledging and respecting each other's differences and striving to improve together. Perhaps due to this influence, I grew up to be an adult who's very uncomfortable with competition. I tried to share my methods and knowledge with my colleagues, but that made me seem like a troublesome know-it-all. Gradually, this took a toll on my mental health, and I ended up resigning from my last 2 jobs within 6 months. That's when I realized I was suffering from depression, and now I'm able to work thanks to medication and counseling. Emily was concerned that Alex's harassment might have worsened my condition, but my issue was solely with competitive environments. Living abroad, is not uncommon to encounter racial discrimination and derogatory remarks. Thanks to that, I've become accustomed to ignoring such sarcasm and mild harassment. Alex's behavior fell within the range of what I could ignore, so it wasn't a problem for me. In fact, my doctor mentioned that I might soon be able to stop taking medication as my depression was nearly in remission. Emily flashed a relieved smile, but then she left with a meaningful grin. Later on, a personnel announcement revealed that Alex, who had been suspended, was demoted and transferred. I was also ordered to transfer from the International Business Department to the HR department. Despite saying I wasn't good at interpersonal relations, I was moved to HR. Though I was unhappy, Emily assured me it would be fine, so I somewhat accepted it. Emily was transferred to the secretarial department, preparing to become the next president. Years later, I was promoted to department head. It turned out I had a knack for personnel training, and the employees I trained performed well in every department. After the incident with Alex, the company overhauled its training program, with the HR department taking charge. I was unexpectedly put in charge of employee training, and it turned out to be quite popular. I was worried that my training, being someone who disliked social interactions, would be worse than the one that used prestigious university entrance exam questions. However, one day, when I introduced phonics, which many employees were interested in, their foreign language skills significantly improved. Lately, due to employee preferences, the focus on foreign language skills in training programs has become a significant concern. But Emily is thrilled that improved foreign language skills could enhance the company's profits. I know this because Emily and I recently started dating. She confessed to me after I was recognized for my achievements in personnel development and promoted to department head. Apparently, she had harbored feelings for me since our days in the International Business Department. When I questioned what she signed a quiet, slightly chubby guy like me, she said my humble demeanor despite my competence was what she admired the most. Though I have my own self-assessment, others seem to view me as modest. Thanks to Emily's plans for my physical improvement, I've also gotten in better shape, making everything even better. While I was enjoying my happiness, I learned of rumors that I was being considered for the next president of the company. Believing that Emily was destined to be the next president, I asked her if the rumors were true. Emily said nothing had been decided yet. However, the current president seemingly favors me, evidenced by casual conversations about my potential role as president. Emily also expressed doubts about her suitability for the presidency. After all, if I became president, I might end up encouraging competition among employees, right? I too would prefer to avoid creating a competitive environment. Yet the idea of me becoming president was daunting. Seeing my apprehensive expression, Emily laughed and said, "If we could just combine our strengths, we'd be perfect for the role." I couldn't help but laugh along, wishing such a solution were possible. I can't be as outspoken or as decisive as Emily. Even if I were to be appointed as the next president, I resolved to become more assertive to avoid letting the president or Emily down. I might not be able to achieve much on my own, but I have people around me willing to help. For the sake of those kind individuals, I want to ensure I don't let them down. Step by step, I aim not to forget to make an effort to clear each problem that arises. Promise me you'll marry me in the future, okay? These were the words a childhood friend said to me when we were in elementary school. Even now, as an adult, I vividly remember her words. We became a couple in high school, but eventually broke up after a fight. Despite that, I've spent 20 years unable to forget my ex-girlfriend. And somehow, I found myself reuniting with her, as if by a miracle. My name is Michael. I'm a long-haul truck driver. I travel all across the country, delivering goods, sometimes not returning home for 2 weeks. After graduating high school, I continued this irregular job, often sleeping in my truck. Before I knew it, I reached this age where more and more of my school friends and colleagues are getting married. After a long drive, when I finally meet my colleagues, they often ask, "Aren't you going to get married?" I'd like to, but well, I reply with a wry smile. Then, a colleague would look concerned and ask, "What's up? Is something wrong?" "No, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." I responded that way to my colleague and climbed back into my truck. Even to a close colleague, I couldn't share my troubles with love. I do want to get married, but there's someone I can't forget, even after all these years. That person is my ex-girlfriend from when I was a sophomore in high school. It's been 20 years since Ashley and I broke up in high school, and we haven't seen each other since. I know that wishing to marry Ashley, despite everything, is futile. Besides, being hung up on an ex-girlfriend from high school for 20 years would probably make me the butt of jokes among my colleagues. I understand that marrying Ashley is impossible. Yet, whenever I hear the word marriage, I can't help but think of Ashley. Even 20 years after we broke up, I'm still unable to move on due to my lingering feelings for Ashley. Ashley was a childhood friend from elementary school. Our houses were close, and our parents were good friends. After school, we would play together or do homework every day. Meeting up after school or during holidays was a given. Visiting each other's homes and playing was a normal part of our daily lives. Ashley felt like more than a friend. There was a deeper connection. It was in the spring when Ashley and I were in the 3rd grade. Ashley's older cousin got married. Ashley showed me photos of the wedding, with her cousin in a pure white wedding dress. The photos captured a magical world, enchanting me. As I was mesmerized by the photos, Ashley shyly said, "Promise me you'll marry me in the future, okay?" I involuntarily swallowed at Ashley's words. Just imagining Ashley in a beautiful wedding dress made my heart race. Surprised and nervous, I couldn't find the words to respond. After that, our days continued with after-school activities and homework. I believed we would always spend our days together, even in the distant future. But then, a tragic event disrupted our peaceful lives. In our 5th year of elementary school, Ashley's father died in a traffic accident. Following that, Ashley and her mother became withdrawn. I tried to cheer her up, suggesting, "Hey, let's play together today." But she simply replied, "I can't today," turning me down. I wondered to myself, why won't Ashley play with me, and felt down all alone. Then, my mom explained, Ashley is grieving the loss of her father, who was the pillar of their family. Give her some space for now. That makes sense. Ashley's father was incredibly kind and reliable, truly living up to being the family's pillar. At the sports festival, it was Ashley's father who took the lead in preparing the lunch and setting up the camera. Given that such a father was suddenly gone, it's understandable that Ashley would be filled with anxiety. Every time we saw each other at school, I continued to be considerate of Ashley. "I'm sorry for asking you to play the other day. I didn't realize you were feeling down." When I did, Ashley smiled and said, "It's okay, it's tough right now, but let's play together again once I feel better." Though I didn't see Ashley every day anymore, I made sure to be available to hang out during breaks, on her terms. Every time we met during breaks, I kept asking her, "Are you okay? Have you been well?" Ashley always showed me a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm fine," but I noticed something. There were times when her smile was genuine and times when it was forced. The loss of her father meant healing the emotional wounds wouldn't be easy. Quietly, I sensed this just by looking at her expressions. Eventually, Ashley and I attended the same middle and high school. Waiting for the right moment when Ashley's feelings had settled, I told her that I liked her in our sophomore year of high school. She was a significant presence in my life, whom I had loved from afar for years and watched go through hard times after her father's passing. When Ashley and I started dating, I was overjoyed, feeling like I was on top of the world. Ashley laughed happily, saying, "I never imagined I would actually date Michael." "Me neither. It feels like a dream to be dating you," I replied with a smile. Our relationship started off smoothly, but then another event came that would affect us both. Around the same time Ashley and I started dating, her mother remarried. I heard the new husband was someone from her mother's workplace. He had been supporting her mother since her husband's death. It felt like he was in a similar situation to me, encouraging Ashley when she was down. I thought to myself, both Ashley and her mother must have been equally saddened by her father's death. If they found someone to rely on and could be happy, that was what mattered. Above all, as Ashley's boyfriend, I was there to accept all her hardships. I strongly wanted to cherish her even more from now on. However, it seemed that Ashley's mother's new husband had quite different views from mine. Tom, the new husband of Ashley's mother, loved gambling and drinking. He quit his job soon after the marriage and spent his days gambling. He started demanding money for gambling from Ashley's mother, who had become a housewife after the marriage. If she didn't give him money, he would become moody, throw things, and yell. Because of this, Ashley's living situation deteriorated rapidly. When I met Ashley during the spring break of our sophomore year in high school, she looked emaciated. Even when I asked, "Are you okay?" she just looked down. Then, raising her face, Ashley suddenly glared at me and quietly started to complain. "Hey, why don't you spend more time with me? Why do we always meet at the same cafe?" I was puzzled by her unexpected words. "But isn't it better to prioritize studying for exams right now? Plus, we're students. We don't have much money," I explained. Immediately, she began to vent her long-held frustrations, getting angry. "It's always we're students. We don't have money excuses. How long do I have to keep adjusting to you, who has no ambition? Hearing Ashley's words, I was certain. I had many immature aspects in romance, and it was hard to perfectly understand her feelings. I prioritized studying for exams because I wanted to make her happy in the future. To be honest, I'm just a healthy teenage boy going for puberty. There are many things I'm holding back on, all while thinking it's for the future with Ashley, so I'm restraining myself. She was my first in everything. Because she is so important to me, I thought I didn't want to cause her any more pain. I didn't realize I was making you hold back so much. Staying with me will only make you unhappy. Let's break up for both of our sakes. For me, this was a major decision. Ashley, crying, angrily asked, "Why are you abandoning me like this?" And so, we ended up breaking up and moved on to our senior year of high school, separated. But she was no longer at school. Worried, I went to her house, but it seemed like no one was there. We had just broken up during the spring break a few days earlier. I had no idea where she had disappeared to. "Hey, have you heard the rumor about your ex-girlfriend?" That's what a friend told me, sharing this story. Apparently, her mom's new husband gambled away all their money, and then, it seems they fled to her mom's family home. Hearing this from my friend made me worry about her. But her cell phone and home phone were unreachable. And of course, I had no idea where her mom's family home was, neither its address nor phone number. I deeply regretted our breakup, but it was too late for regrets. After graduating high school with a heavy heart, I threw myself into my current job. One day, a colleague invited me out for drinks for the first time in years. I don't usually go out drinking, but this time, I made an exception for my colleague's birthday celebration. It was a Friday, and the downtown area was bustling with people. Suddenly, I noticed a woman, shivering like a puppy, holding a menu at a bar. Despite it being November, she was trembling in just a short-sleeved shirt. I thought she seemed to be in trouble, and I took a closer look at the woman, only to realize she was my ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago. The moment I recognized her, I rushed over to her without looking away. My colleagues, wondering what was going on, followed me, asking, "What's up?" Ashley, right. Long time no see." My voice trembled, thinking it might be a mistake. She widened her eyes and said, "Michael, really? You know her? Let's not stand around talking. Let's go into this bar." Cheerfully, my colleagues headed into the bar where she worked. We rode the elevator in silence, feeling awkward until we were seated. Poking fun at me, my colleagues asked, "So, what's the deal with her? Just an acquaintance, or something more?" They laughed. In a quiet voice, contrary to my colleagues' teasing, I said, "She's an ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago." At that moment, my colleagues froze. "What, 20 years ago? How old were you then?" "Now it's awkward for us too. You should have said something before we entered. You guys were the ones who rushed in before I could explain." As I was exasperated with my colleagues, Ashley came over to take our order. "Have you decided on your order?" In a flurry, one colleague said, "Then, let's have one beef burger set. I'll have a pint and beef stew." This guy will have the beef burger set and a cocktail. He ordered for me as well. There's no need to decide for me. "Well, we feel more awkward about it," my colleagues admitted. Ashley chuckled and said, "It's all in the past, don't worry about it," and after taking our order, she came back to our table. "Today's a Friday, but it's quieter than usual, so consider this special." Then, Ashley shared the reasons behind our breakup and why we hadn't seen each other for 20 years. Indeed, it was just as my friend had said. Her mom's new husband, an unemployed gambler, demanded money from her mom daily. Eventually, when her mom's savings ran out, she had been saying this to Ashley for a while. "Someday, while he's asleep, let's run away." It seems they were secretly packing their belongings to escape from her stepfather. Breaking up with you was becoming inevitable, and it truly hurt. I wished you would hate me, so I said terrible things. She confessed, tears streaming down her face, as I silently hugged her. My colleagues, surprised yet listening intently, stayed quiet. If breaking up was hard for you, you should have just told me that. But I couldn't be honest about my feelings. I couldn't leave my mom behind either. I was still a child, unable to make proper decisions. I'm sorry for saying things that hurt you, she replied. From that day, we began seeing each other again. Back then, I couldn't stand up to him because he was taking all the money, and I wanted to help my crying mom. Choosing between my boyfriend and my parent was an ultimate decision for me. She said with a bitter smile. Is your mom okay now? Yeah, it took time, but things have finally settled down recently. Then, let's prioritize our time together from now on. You've put your parents first until now. It's time to reclaim the time lost as a couple. She was shocked. After 20 years, getting back together, are you sure about me? For 20 years, there hasn't been a single day I haven't thought about you. I honestly didn't think I could ever find someone I loved as much. Will you date me again? She nodded silently, tears flowing. After overcoming 20 years, we restarted our relationship. This time, I hope to cherish her, considering marriage. Until now, we've both prioritized our families and careers for a long time. That's why I'm hoping we can start to prioritize our time together more. The fact that the marriage I had almost given up on with my girlfriend is now drawing closer brings me immense joy. Even after we parted ways, I couldn't let go, and I'm still working hard today with the goal of marrying her in mind.